Hello, today I want to talk about the fertility rate crisis and how industrialized countries will be competing against each other to attract immigrants. The thing is that fertility rates are falling worldwide across all income levels, across all races, across all backgrounds, across all labor force participations, and this is a problem. According to the World Bank and the United Nations, the fertility rate globally right now is 2.4 children per woman, okay? And in the 1950s, there used to be 5 children per woman. So this has decreased tremendously, and the fertility rate necessary to keep the population stable is 2.1. So yes, still we are not at the level globally where we are decreasing, but we are at the level in the industrialized countries where we are not keeping up with this 2.1. Many countries are having way less, and the only way that they can make up for this difference is through immigration policies, or maybe, yes, that's the only way that they can counter the effect of lower fertility rates. In case you are wondering, in the United States, the fertility rate right now is 1.6. And once again, in order to keep the population stable, it needs to be about 2.1. So the United States right now, if it wasn't because of the inflow of immigrants, the population will be decreasing. Fortunately, the United States is one of those few countries that attracts millions of immigrants, so the United States is going to be okay for the moment. But later on, other countries are going to wake up to this reality, and they are going to be accepting more immigrants. This is just a fact. This is the only thing that they will be able in order to compete against each other. So why is this a problem? Well, with less people, we have slower economic growth. Honestly, I don't think that's a problem. I think countries shouldn't exist just for the purpose of having increasing economic growth. The other thing is the pension plan of many countries. I compare the pension plans of many countries, including the United States and Canada, as a Ponzi scheme, because you need new donors, new participants, in order to give money to those who are now retiring. So it's not, the Social Security doesn't work in a way that, okay, I contribute X amount of money throughout my life, and then from that money that I contributed, then I will be able to retire. No, it doesn't work like that. The money that I contribute today it helps to pay for the retirement of those people who are, I don't know, 10, 20 years ahead of me. And the money that I would need in order for me to retire, to have some kind of pension, will be contributed by those workers who are 20, 30, 40 years younger than me. So it's a Ponzi scheme. You need new inflow, new investors, new contributors in order to keep the system afloat. Well, what happens if we have a declining population? There will be less people contributing, and it will not be enough money for all of us who are at the top. So the pyramid, instead of being like this, is going to be the inverse. Less people at the bottom and more people at the top. It's just going to crumble unless we find some solutions. So I'm going to mention some countries who are in particularly going through this crisis, and the worst of them all is South Korea. South Korea, the fertility rate is 0.8. This is horrible. I don't know how they're going to survive through this, and the reasons are because education is expensive, because the cost of living, because whatever reason, people are having higher and higher education. So now people are not only having higher school and secondary, but also masters and doctorate. They all want to have the highest degrees. They have believe this ideology that in order to be worthy, you have to have all these degrees and this high level employment. So that's what people are doing, and they want to have a house as well, so they are saving to buy a house, and all this is delaying when they're going to get married and when they're going to have kids. And this is a problem mostly for many other industrialized countries, so I'm going to skip that explanation for the following countries. The next country that is having a fertility crisis is Japan. Japan, the fertility rate is 1.3, and they already have villages that are depopulating because there are not new kids or young people to live in them. So the older generations are dying off, and they have empty houses all over the place. So this is a huge crisis in Japan. Next is Italy and Spain. They also are having economic crisis. They don't feel like they are ready to have kids, and their fertility rate is about 1.3 children per woman. And China, I wrote an article and I recorded a post about China. China is having an economic implosion. The fertility rate right now is 1.2, and this is a country that wants to grow and that wants to expand and wants to be a competitor in the global scale, and facing this huge problem. And the bigger problem that China has is that, as opposed to the United States and Europe, where thousands of immigrants want to come to this country, that's not the case with China. In fact, people from China are trying to escape China to go to the United States or Canada or Europe. And finally, Eastern European countries such as Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, the fertility rate is about 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 max, and the problem is that these are the poorest countries in Europe, and what they are doing is that the population is immigrating as much as possible to the richer countries such as England, for example. So England is benefiting greatly from the Polish or Hungarian population, but the Hungarian and Polish population and Bulgaria, they are suffering because their young people are just going away, and this is a big problem for them. So what are the main reasons for this declining fertility rate? Well, it may not be a surprise to you, but having a child is expensive, okay? And many families, yes, they want to have a child, maybe two, but what they are doing is that they are choosing to have a smaller family. So at one time, it was normal to have father, mother, and 3-4 children, right? But now it's father, mother, 1, maybe 2 children, right? Because because children are so expensive, they want to just dedicate more money to one child instead of little money to many children. That way they can focus on the education of these children. Let's say you have 4 kids, okay? Then you have to have a house with 4 different bedrooms, or maybe cram them together into one bedroom, but that's not a pleasant experience. They want to give everything they can to this 1 or 2 children, and then also they want to have a little bit of leftover money to go on a vacation from time to time, to go to a restaurant from time to time. So they don't want to be scraping by, always living from paycheck to paycheck. They want to have a little bit of a life and have 1 or 2 children. So those are the couples who have decided to have a child or 2. But there are many other couples who say, hey, we don't need to have children. We could have 2 incomes and just spend it and live life and go on vacation all the time and buy the fancy car that they always wanted to buy and have this luxurious apartment or house somewhere else. And the money that they save from having children, well, that's the money that they use for all this expensive. In addition to that, there are birth control. Women are learning how to use better birth control. This is a tendency that has been going on for a few decades. But in addition to that as well, women are going to college and they are deciding to have a career. They decided to have secondary studies and a master, and they want to climb the corporate ladder, and it's hard to do if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 children running around. So yeah, many women are deciding, okay, what I would like to do with my life is just to have a career. I want to be a CEO of whatever company, and the only way to do that is to compete against men, because men, they don't worry so much about the children, but the woman, then they have to give up having children in order to be on the same level. And those are the reasons why the advanced industrialized countries are having less children. So why is this a problem? Well, once again, because many economists mention once again that they are going to have problems with the pensions, okay? But I think civilization in itself can adapt. We can become more productive. Now we have artificial intelligence doing the labor of 2 or 3 people at a time. So, we don't have to have so many people in order to create enough resources to maintain or help out those generations ahead of us. It is a problem because if we have less people, economists are afraid that we will have a lower gross domestic product, and that may be right. But if our population is not growing, then we don't need to have a higher and higher gross domestic problem. I mean, I live in an apartment, I pay all my bills. I don't need to continue earning more and more money year after year. I'm quite happy with where I am in life. And many people will find themselves happy where they are in life as well. In many countries, maybe they will reach that equilibrium. Okay, our gross domestic product is X. We are not going any higher, we're not going any lower, but they can still go higher because there are all these advancements in technologies. For example, right now in California, they're having all these robotaxis, okay? So robotaxis, they are taking the jobs of taxi drivers. And that's an advancement in technology. You could have, a taxi driving corporation could have 100 taxis driving around with maybe 2 or 3 operators just making sure everything is okay. And then this technology is going to advance to maybe the trucking industry. So instead of having thousands of truck drivers on the road, you may need just a few just to make sure everything is running fine. So we are developing, our technology is developing in a way that we could continue producing and growing with less people, and this is going to solve the Ponzi scheme that is the pension plan of many countries. Yes, technological advances are going to help us get through this crisis. So what are some advantages of having a declining population? Well, there is reduced competition for resources. So let's say farming, okay? Let's say we needed 100 tons of, let's say, meat, to say something, and now we can produce that we can produce laboratory meat, and so we will have all this food and we will have less people to consume it. So we will have to fight less for the limited resources. And the same with housing. We are having a housing problem right now, mostly because we are not building houses fast enough, but also because the population is growing due to the immigration of due to immigrants coming around. So those are things that should balance themselves. There will be less competition for the limited amount of resources that we have available right now. As I mentioned before, we are getting better with technology as well, with artificial intelligence, robotics, better way to do everything. And another thing is that we will be able, maybe a retirement age in the United States and Canada is about 65, but if you don't have to do grueling, unpleasant work, then you may want to stay in the labor force for a little bit longer. I have the ability to retire, But you know what? I like working, and many people will find themselves in the same situation. Maybe people who are in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they can still doing consulting. Look at the President of the United States. This is a person who do not want to retire, who wants to stay active. And everyone in government in the United States right now, there are older people, 50, 60, 70 years old, but they feel like they are doing meaningful work. So the same thing will happen with many of us. We will not have to do maybe the heavy lifting, dirty work, like for example, with farming. Okay, there are all these machineries right now who are picking up crops, so we don't need as many immigrants to be picking up the crops, but we will need people who are operating those machines. So technology is going to alleviate the labor force problem, and people are going to be happy with their life. I went to Iceland not too long ago, right? And then they have public toilets that are not cleaned by human beings, they are cleaned by machines. They have all these sprays and soap and this and that. So that is an advancement. And now a person who used to be the janitor, well, that janitor doesn't exist. Now that janitor maybe is the owner of all these cleaning operations, and that person may want to stay a little bit longer than 65 years. Another advantage of lower population is what? Lower levels of pollution. Okay, so let's say we are 1 million people, yes, polluting the planet. We are buying plastic stuff from China. We are driving our gas polluting automobiles. We are heating our houses. But let's say we are, instead of 1 million people, let's say we are 500,000. Well, that's 500,000 people who are polluting the planet, but other half that are no longer there. So the less people we have, I think the better it will be for the climate, for the environment. I mean, one of the biggest fear that people have at this moment is climate change, because we are polluting the planet. Well, if we are less people polluting the planet, then that should be less of a problem. Another advantage of declining population is that we will have better education. Okay, I was telling you about the problem of a family having 3 children and maybe having a limited amount of money. So maybe those children will be going to a cheaper college. But now let's say there's only one. Okay, so now we have mother, father, grandfather, and grandmother, all of them contributing to the expense of this child education, and if that's something done globally, well, people are just going to be better educated overall. And finally, immigration. As I mentioned before, because industrialized countries are not producing enough babies, the only way that they can continue growing or having a stable population is to accept more immigrants. And I tell you, it is 2024 right now. Within 10 years, let's say 2035, countries are going to be competing against each other to attract more immigrants, because those are the young laborers that are going to be able to help us. So overall, the declining population in the industrialized countries, they are giving us opportunities and challenges that we need to face. The challenge is that we need to rethink how the economies and society function with less people, and the advantages are that we are creating a more equitable and sustainable future. We will be able to better spread the resources that we have among fewer people, and I think we are headed to a better future with less people, less pollution, more welcoming immigration. I see it as a positive step, and I'm sure we will be able to overcome the pension problems and maybe the GDP problems. Those, in fact, the more that I think of it, they are not a serious problem. I know economists, even Elon Musk is sounding the alarm about declining population, But no, I think we are headed in the right direction. I think we are overpopulating the planet. I think that we don't need to grow economically every year. And I think with less people, I think we will have a more equitable system. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and until soon. Peace.